Welcome, dear listeners, to another episode of George on Philosophy. I'm your host, George, seeking to delve into the caverns of the human experience and thought in a journey that questions both the untold mysteries of existence and the granulate details of our everyday realities. Today, we find ourselves confronted with an intriguing question. Can free will be compromised by mental illness or neurological disorders? Now, to consider this question adequately, we must first understand the concept of free will. Free will, in philosophical terms, is the propensity of rational agents to choose a course of action from among various alternatives. But here's the thorny issue: does free will truly exist, or are we simply the culmination of a sequence of cause and effect relationships that date back to the dawn of time? Some philosophical doctrines suggest that all events are predetermined, asserting that nothing happens just because, as if every action is a direct consequence of a sequence of events that preceded it. These deterministic points of view cast a shadow of doubt over the existence of free will, proposing instead that choice is an illusion. However, the widely accepted paradigm is that we do have free will, that we are not simply marionettes under the leviathan strings of deterministic cause and effect. Under this concept, it's critical to consider how free will can be affected by mental illness and neurological disorders. When we broach the subject of mental illness or neurological disorders, it's essential to underline that these encompass a broad spectrum of conditions, from depression, anxiety disorders, and schizophrenia to neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Each of these conditions has the potential to impact cognition, perception, and consciousness in various ways, but do they compromise free will? That remains the question. Consider the case of an individual suffering from severe depression. Their perception of the world is often one veiled by an impervious filter of desolation and despair. One could argue that this individual's ability to exercise free will is obscured, as their choices may be heavily influenced by their depressed state rather than an autonomous and rational decision-making process. Similarly, in the instance of neurological disorders, say Alzheimer's, a person's memory erodes, resulting in not only an altered perception of reality but also leading to significant behavioral changes. In such scenarios, one could argue the free will of this individual is constrained owing to the disorder affecting their cognitive faculties. What some of these disorders do is they alter the software of our cognition, our rational thinking, emotions, and perception. They change who we are at basic levels, and this can influence our decision-making process, leading us to question whether or not free will can truly operate under these conditions. Yet, it's important to question if these alterations actually compromise free will, or merely shift the boundaries within which it functions. Do they rob us of free will, or do they just change the landscape in which free will is enacted? These are questions that blur the lines between philosophy, psychology, neurology, and perhaps even spirituality. So, can free will be compromised by mental illness or neurological disorders? It's not a question that can be definitively answered, and perhaps it serves more as a catalyst for deeper contemplation about the nature of human consciousness and decision-making. It invites us to explore further the fault lines of our understanding where philosophy intermingles with neuroscience and psychology. Join me, George, next time as we continue to dig deep into the ceaseless stream of philosophical inquiries. Until then, keep thinking, keep questioning, stay curious. This is George on Philosophy.